It's very frustrating. Even though I'm out on bail, I have restrictions on my freedom, and I'm being treated as a criminal. I have been unable to leave the state of Illinois ever since this started nearly 3 years ago. I'm still not through the process, but at the same time, the only way to defeat this statute is to make it go through the court system. I believe that the First Amendment is already so clear on the issue that this is a no-brainer and shouldn't even need to be discussed. But since there are people being put in jeopardy across this country, and I'm one of them, it seems like we need a clarification out of the U.S. Supreme Court.
We have new developments in our investigation that's been watched on YouTube more than 250,000 times. It's about the local man facing felony charges for recording audio of law enforcement in public. That's perfectly legal to do here in Indiana, but it's considered a crime just across the border in Illinois. The felony eavesdropping case against Michael Allison has been dismissed.
I was surprised to see that I'd got a ruling like that out of this court.
The judge in Crawford County has ruled that the Illinois eavesdropping statute is unconstitutional.
I believe that the public pressure did have an effect on it with the media attention and everything that it got.
But Allison's case isn't over. The state is appealing to the Illinois Supreme Court to try to overturn the ruling.
It's very frustrating. Even though I'm out on bail, I have restrictions on my freedom, and I'm being treated as a criminal. I have been unable to leave the state of Illinois ever since this started nearly 3 years ago.
Allison isn't the only one fighting the state over publicly recording audio of law enforcement without permission. Louis Frobe was pulled over for speeding last year near Chicago. He didn't think he had done anything wrong, so he recorded the traffic stop on his flip camera.
Yeah, I've been doing. Is it recording our conversation? Yeah. That's what? You're eavesdropping on our conversation. I did not give you permission to do so. Step out of my vehicle. Step out of the vehicle.
Frobe was arrested for recording audio without the officer's consent. The officer's dash cam also recorded the conversation, but police are above the Illinois eavesdropping law.
If I'm getting pulled over for a speeding ticket, who in their right mind thinks it's a class 4 felony to pull out their cell phone, plop it on the dashboard, and hit record?
But that's the law in Illinois, and Chapin Rose has tried to change it.
With the now dominance of cell phone video cameras, you're going to see more and more of this.
Rose is the state representative who's tried for years but couldn't get support in the State House to repeal the Illinois eavesdropping statute.
It endangers anybody who pulls out a recorder and begins to record, without getting the consent of the recordee.
The Illinois eavesdropping statute prohibits recording audio without permission, and it even applies to journalists. According to the state law, broadcasters are only exempt during public functions.
That's why all your radio people here will always say, "This is Dave Dahl from such and such radio station. Do I have your permission to record?"
It's not just radio. Video recordings aren't always protected either, especially if the recordings aren't clearly disclosed. In fact, the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press has a warning on its website. It says the audio portion of a videotape will be treated under the regular wiretapping laws in any state. The Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press is among 7 journalism organizations that filed this court brief in April to try to overturn the law. The brief says Illinois' eavesdropping statute is shockingly broad, so broad that it inhibits the basic right to gather information and is a clear burden on the First Amendment. That court brief is part of an ACLU lawsuit in federal appeals court, which is one step below the U.S. Supreme Court. The ACLU is hoping the 7th Circuit Federal Appeals Court in Chicago will overturn the Illinois eavesdropping law. ACLU spokesman Harvey Grossman.
You can video the police officer. You can photograph the police officer. They admit that you can listen to the police officer and even write down what the police officer is saying, but you can't turn on the audio button. It simply doesn't make any sense.
The ACLU's lawsuit was dismissed earlier this year by a lower court. The lawsuit now awaits a decision by the 7th Circuit Federal Appeals Court. One of the 7th Circuit judges already commented on the case during a hearing in September. Judge Richard Posner said, if you permit the audio recordings, there'll be a lot more eavesdropping. There's going to be a lot of this snooping around by reporters and bloggers. Yes, it's a bad thing. If that's the same opinion of the other judges, then the 7th Circuit Federal Appeals Court won't overturn the Illinois eavesdropping law. But the 1st Circuit Federal Appeals Court just recently ruled in favor of publicly recording audio without consent. That decision was made on a 2007 case in Boston involving this cell phone recording. Simon Glick recorded this arrest because he thought police used excessive force. Glick was then arrested himself for violating Massachusetts wiretapping law. In August, the 1st Circuit ruled in Glick's favor, saying the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment protects public audio recordings without consent. But that ruling only applies to states in the 1st Circuit, not all the other states with eavesdropping and wiretapping laws. Those with the toughest laws are known as all-consent states. That means you need consent from all parties of a conversation to record audio. Illinois has the harshest law. That's why the ACLU filed its lawsuit.
It is virtually unheard of for law enforcement officers in other states in our country to be protected or to be able to use eavesdropping laws as a weapon against citizens who seek to do nothing more than record their activities.
All the recording police cases in Illinois would have to be dropped if the 7th Circuit overturns the eavesdropping statute. If not, and the Illinois Supreme Court upholds the state's appeal against Michael Allison, then he'd go on trial. And if convicted, Allison would face up to 75 years in prison for those felony eavesdropping charges.
I'm still not through the process, but at the same time, the only way to defeat this statute is to make it go through the court system.
No matter how Allison's case or any of the recording cases end, any of them could ultimately be appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. If so, the High Court could decide once and for all whether it's a constitutional right to publicly record audio of law enforcement without their permission.
I believe that the First Amendment is already so clear on the issue that this is a no-brainer and shouldn't even need to be discussed. But since there are people being put in jeopardy across this country, and I'm one of them, it seems like we need a clarification out of the U.S. Supreme Court.
Would you record police again?
With the charges that are pending, I would be leery of it myself.
Eavesdropping and wiretapping laws are starting to cause a chilling effect on recording. The 1991 Rodney King beating in L.A. only became public because of this tape. Without a Supreme Court decision to allow recordings in all states, citizens might not record police abuse in the future. And there's no timetable for the Illinois Supreme Court or the 7th Circuit Federal Appeals Court.
You violated my right to privacy. Those are the words of Crawford County, Illinois Circuit Court Judge Kimbra Harrell when Michael Allison responded to having a tape recorder in his pocket at his own trial. Michael now faces 75 years in prison for attempting to document his own trial after being denied a court reporter. But the case goes even deeper. Michael Allison was on the cusp of exposing a scheme that was potentially bringing in tens of thousands of dollars off the backs of citizens. How would they do it? According to Michael Allison, a city ordinance sits on the books that doesn't allow you to keep a car in your driveway if it's inoperable. If you do, it must be registered, have up-to-date license and registration, and insurance. But in Michael's case, he was working on his mother's car, and because the car was not up to code, he was in violation and received a citation to appear in court. Apparently, according to Michael, this sort of thing is happening all over his county. Police issue the citation, they tow the car, then the citizen is charged with the fine and forced to pay for storage of the vehicle and towing fees. In most cases, if people cannot afford to pay and the county files a lien, confiscates the car, issues a new title, and then sells the car. And another citizen falls victim to the crushing power of the law and loses their property in the land of the free, in the home of the brave. Now back to the judge. In retaliation to Michael's threats to expose the legalized plunder of the county's citizens, the judge used the Illinois wiretapping statute to arrest Michael in the courtroom for violating the judge's right to privacy. Since when does a judge sitting on their stand in their courtroom have a right to privacy? Do you want to help Michael Allison? You can call the courthouse and let them know the whole nation is now eavesdropping on the case. The number is 618-544-3512. Cops and judges are the servants of the people who have sworn an oath to protect our rights, not to protect their interests. They want to put cameras up on every street corner and police dashboard, but the moment we point a camera at them, we become the criminals.